is Janice Fuller and I'm an ecologist, and I'm here by the Clarenbridge River in South Galway, and this clip is going to really hopefully help community groups who are doing projects anywhere near water or wetlands. Wetlands along rivers and lakes, they act like filters. They intercept sediment running off land and prevent them from going into water, so they kind of filter out any pollutants. But they're also a bit like sponges, so they're very good at helping sort of mitigate against flooding or buffer against high rainfall events. And they hold on to water and they release it slowly. So they're a very important job on the landscape, protecting our water resources and water quality, as well as being a fantastic habitat for wildlife. So a lot of community groups are working on projects like developing river walks, and they might be putting up interpretive signage just to kind of highlight the rich natural heritage or built heritage in an area. They might be doing projects like controlling invasive species, or maybe repointing a bridge. There's lots of different things that people might be doing in and around water. So it's very important to do it in a way that you have a good project outcome, but that you don't have any negative impact on water or wetland habitats or cause any disturbance to the biodiversity in wetlands, so that you have a really positive project outcome. Any kind of pollution event, even if it's very small, so that would be things like even just sediment running into a stream or a river, or oils or a bit of concrete, even if you think it's very small, it could have a really big impact, because it sort of depends on whether there's been pollution events before, the timing of the event, if it's maybe during the breeding season or the spawning season, if you're altering water flow or water volumes. There's loads of different things that you can have a cumulative impact depending on what's happened before. So you might think what you're doing is very small and you're only washing off a bit of old concrete out of a bucket, but it could actually have a huge impact if there's been other events previously, or if it just happens to be at a critical time for the wildlife in the water body, the river or stream. So it's very important just to prevent any kind of pollution, so that you're sure that you're not going to have a long-lasting impact on water, because as I said, we all depend on water as well as the biodiversity that lives in and around it. Well, if you're starting any project in or near water, the first thing that I would recommend is that you consult the heritage officer in the council, who could point you in the right direction of maybe who else you need to talk to. The community and waters officer, who's also located in the council, has lots of information and advice and and guidance that they can give you. You might need to talk to Inland Fisheries Ireland, particularly if you're walking in water. You might need permission from them. So they would be the key people that I would talk to if I was doing any project. Even if you don't think you're all that close to water, there could be a little tributary or stream that you might need to consider. So I would always talk to the heritage officer and maybe the community waters officer, and they can give you some good advice. So again, the next thing you do once you've talked to people would be to have a look around your site. But it's really important to look at the site as a whole and look, what habitats are there? Are there any water bodies, any rivers, lakes, even tiny little streams or ditches might be important, because they might flow into a bigger river or a lake. So look at your site, what water bodies are there, where is the water flowing to? Does the site ever flood? You could be doing a project that might be wiped out in 3 years' time if the site floods, and that's where your consultation will help as well. So you really need to look around, think very broadly. You might be doing something on, say, the built heritage, but you really need to look at the natural heritage as well, and particularly at water and any watery habitats, because they might, inform how you're going to do the project. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but it's just how you go about it so that the water resources are protected. So you've done your consultation, you've surveyed the site, and the next thing to do is to come up with a detail plan. Any heritage project you do, it's best to come up with a plan. And this will be based on the consultation that you've had, which will kind of identify issues and opportunities. You've surveyed the site, look around, what are the features of the site, come up with a detailed plan and a methodology, what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, is how you're going to do it and who's going to do it, and make sure that everybody who's working on the project understands that methodology and agrees with it. And there might be some aspects where you need permission, or you might need an ecological assessment. You might need permission, say, from the National Monument Surveys of any built heritage or bridges or features associated with the site or the water bodies. And if it's an important aquatic habitat, or if it's flowing into a site designated for nature conservation, you might need to do an ecological assessment, and there might be an assessment that is required from a legal point of view, or it might be just best practice because there's important features there that you want to protect. And it's really good for sort of a long-lasting and a positive and a successful outcome that you do things the right ways and make it even a better project. So if you're working near water, it's really one of the first things that you could do is create a buffer zone if there's a river or stream or lake, which might be just the area that has wetland vegetation or floods periodically, or it might be just that you decide we're going to keep 5 meters, 1 to 5 meters away from the river or lake edge to make sure that there's absolutely no potential for damage, so that if you're doing any works on the site, that nobody goes within that buffer zone. So you don't store concrete blocks, you don't mix concrete, you don't throw all the equipment there, you keep away from the water body, and that's the best way that you can protect it from any kind of inadvertent damage. You mightn't be planning to do anything near in that zone, but just marking that area out and making sure nobody does anything in there is really one of the best things you can do to make sure there's no damage. In some cases, planting trees can be the best thing you could do, but in other cases, if there's too much shading, that might be a negative. So it doesn't mean you can't do it, but just get advice if you're planting trees anywhere near water. In many cases, it can be very positive. It can add to the riparian. It can be good for wildlife and protecting the aquatic habitat. But I would always ask first, because there might be an important wetland habitat there. So you could actually be, even though you're doing something that you think is good for biodiversity, it could be a negative if there's already a nice bit of wetland there. So it's just to get some advice if you're planting trees and shrubs, and obviously but you'd be going for native species. If you have invasive species on your site, you really need to get professional advice, because it's very important that you're not going to do anything that's going to cause them to spread any further. And then you might need to develop an invasive species control plan so that you control the species that are there and don't allow them to spread any further. But especially where you have things like Japanese knotweed, any digging in and around knotweed is the worst thing you can do, because again it can grow from fragments, stem fragments, so really you just want to not touch it, get your advice, come up with your invasive species control plan, and to get professional input in terms of the control and treatment of it. But you're responsible if you facilitate the spread of it, and it is illegal to cause the spread of invasive species. It's absolutely essential that you get professional advice, and the Heritage Officer, Communities Waters Officer, Inland Fisheries Ireland are there to help you, and there's very good guidance out there to assist. So it's great that many community groups in Galway are working on projects in their towns and villages, heritage projects and natural amenity projects that are making their places better. And if you're working in or near water, it's just very important to really ensure that whatever you're doing doesn't have a negative impact on water quality, aquatic habitats and wetland biodiversity. And that will mean that your project has a really positive outcome and really long-lasting contribution to your area.